So today, what I want to do is demystify the origin of these FSB letters that Vladimir Osechkin has been receiving from the wind of change from inside the FSB, which is the equivalent, of course, of the KGB. First, something that should be obvious, but I want to make sure people understand. I will not be disclosing any information that is not already public. So the information gap that exists with regards to the origin of these letters is primarily language barrier. A lot of this information that I'm going to cover is available in Russian. It's been publicized directly by Vladimir himself. So there are no secrets here that I'm going to be disclosing, and it's not necessary anyway to understand the context and the background of these FSB letters. With regards to me personally and how I ended up in this position, we'll just follow through on a timeline of how these events occurred. My personal background, I was born in Ukraine. I was born in Kiev. So I grew up in Ukraine, Germany, Japan, and the United States. My career was as a professional race car driver. Initially, I started that right out of high school in the United States to learn how to become a driver on a racetrack. Competed in some amateur events. Had very good success early on, and that just led to an invitation from Nissan and Nissan Motorsports to come to Japan and race. And I spent many years in my 20s in that career path in Japan. So when the invasion began on the 24th of February, of course, I myself also I'm an American citizen, but I have family in Ukraine, and it's my birthplace. So this is something that was very shocking initially, very difficult to believe it's happening, but such is life sometimes. And given that there's just no possibility for me to be able to actually go to Ukraine and help on the ground, I was just really working really hard and thinking how I can help. So how I can help personally, what I can contribute to try to bring an end to this nightmare. And I never really used Twitter in the past. My account was basically dormant. I had like 200 followers, and I began to actually start writing about my thoughts on this terrible situation on March 1st. Initially, I shared my thread as a reply to one of Garry Kasparov's tweets, and a lot of his readers picked up on that and shared it. And so at that point, I actually ended up with a little bit of an audience. I think it went from like 200 followers to 800 followers. And on March 5th, I stumbled upon a public post by Vladimir Osechkin that he made on Facebook, which was the Russian text of that very first letter that I translated. And as I read it in Russian, I thought that this must get translated into English. because it offered such huge insight into how Russia works and what Russia is as a country, as a system under Putin. Once I made that translation and posted on Twitter, of course, it picked up a lot of steam very quickly. It was seen by over 30 million people on Twitter alone. I think very largely thanks to Alexander Vindman retweeting it and urging his readers to check it out. But it was also retweeted by a pretty renowned Japanese politician, various ambassadors, former and current, from around the world, current parliamentarians in the European Union, and so on. And at that point, of course, it is very healthy to have doubts and questions about what this letter is. And I was in that camp myself. But on the face of it, the contents of the letter make total sense. It is written very eloquently in a way that a common layperson can understand. And I reached out to Vladimir Osechkin. I had no contact with him ever before. I knew very little about him. Right after that initial translation was making a huge impact in people's minds. And it was a very interesting conversation. He was very happy to see what had happened with that translation. And he was just astounded by the response and the exposure that these contents received in English. He posted this letter on Facebook more as a curiosity. The reason being, people that actually understand Russia, that understand how even just the Russian-speaking world works, there aren't huge revelations in that first letter. It's written very well, but most of these things are rather obvious to Russian speakers. And I want to take this chance now to get into Vladimir's background to explain why there is this communication that's back and forth between Vladimir and the Wind of Change. So Vladimir was, and currently still is, a human rights activist who is Russian, but he's in exile in France since 2015. For over 10 years now, his mission has been to expose and stop the systemic, horrible tortures that are occurring inside Russian prisons. This has been his personal fight for a very long time. These tortures are state-sanctioned by the Russian government. And prior to 2015, he was active trying to provide exposure to this situation from inside Russia. But at a certain point, he ended up getting tipped off that it's best that he actually leave the country. So in terms of him getting information from inside the Russian intelligence community, that itself is nothing new.